Radio, broadcasting from Moriarty, New Mexico, and Dennis is producing the show and co-hosting the show from St. Louis, Missouri. Well, it's been quite a while since we've had a show, and a lot has gone down. Dan and I were at the MUM in Denver. That was a very interesting show. A lot of interesting new products that Microtech is coming up with that they showcased, and look forward to that stuff being shipped. Out here in New Mexico, it's been sweltering hot. Cook eggs on my hood of my truck, thing running, just blazing hot. But we've been out there getting ready to lay a couple 100 feet of fiber optic tomorrow, doing some drilling and excavation. But looking forward to that. Gonna do it at 6:30 in the morning so that we don't melt during the heat of the day. But other than that, no rain, just dry, and hot, hot, hot. How about you, Dennis? What's it like in your neck of the woods?
Well, I'll tell you what, we've had some rain recently. It's definitely not been overall that bad by any means. Lots of green grass, very nice days lately. Low humidity, not the normal St. Louis summer, but we haven't really started summer yet for the most part. So we'll have to see how that all works out at the end. Otherwise, we've been very busy with all of our projects. We have a whole bunch of DNS projects. We have a whole bunch of server projects. Lots and lots of projects. So we keep, we definitely keep busy as always. I know you said we went to the MUM there. That was a good time.
Yeah, that was a great time, and I wanted to just talk about a little bit of MUM recap before we get onto the show. There were some interesting things that they were announcing, like their CRS 3717. It's a 16-port fiber switch. Can't wait for that to hit the market.
Yeah, it's all 10 gig.
About their,
all 10 gig. Yeah, that one's all 10 gig.
All 10 gig. All SFP plus.
Yep.
And I see, don't they make a 317 with 1 gig ports?
I don't remember. I'm looking here. I'm not finding. Yeah. They definitely announced some new products. Obviously, that is all depending on which products you're talking about. And, of course, just like everybody else, we have issues with getting the products. Usually, Microtech is usually pretty good about specifically stating, hey, this is going to be available at this time. And they typically, put that out there. They actually sit there and say, hey, this is what's going on. So that's really, really good on Microtech's part. But they also say what time frame the products is going to go, which is, again, a really good thing. So I know they're coming out with a couple switches, the 10 gig stuff. They've already announced their 24-port PoE out switch, which I'm very excited. Well, maybe not excited. Excited is probably not the right word, but I am excited for that product because that's going to solve a lot of customer needs and things like that. So that's always really good. Then they also announced a lot of their new LTE gear, and specifically they have created, either them or their manufacturers have created an LTE modem that they will have a US kit version for. So they'll have a WAP, which is a 2-port access point, that can run off DC power, that has a cellular modem that is for the US carriers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, those type of carriers, as well as having dual SIMs so that you can actually subscribe to multiple services. We are really anxiously waiting for those. Those are not available just yet, but we are, as soon as we see that they're available, we'll put an order in for some so we can test them and evaluate them. They also have a couple new LTE routers that are specifically designed to go into a vehicle. They're a little bit more hardened. They have a serial port so that you can document and get data. Most of that stuff is nothing new, nothing really cool and awesome. However, I could definitely see some police cars and mobile hotspot type stuff start to come out of that.
Yeah, what I found interesting is their replacements for the 411 and 433 board. Can't wait to get my hands on those. The M11 is the replacement for the 411, and then the M33 is the upgrade for the 433. Very interesting board. Can't wait to get my hands on it, like I said.
And then they also
'cause I'm
have
running
the
low on those.
they also have the 1100 AHX4 now as well. Same exact cost, 64 gig SSD. You can run the Dude on it, and that's really a really great product. Same form factor, dual power supplies, I think. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, really, really good stuff. They did not post. I was just checking. They did not post their. They posted their video, but they did not post their opening introduction PDF. So it is what it is. So we don't really have anything to reference.
What was cool about that 24-port PoE out switch is that according to them, it auto senses for the high current stuff, so you can just plug it in there. You don't have to make a change. It just automatically senses it and cranks it up to the high output power that like your Air Fibers or your Mimosa products need. That was pretty powerful. I would consider it a Microtech solution for the Nettonics boxes.
Oh yeah, and I think that's going to definitely hurt the Nettonics market because, Nettonics, they do make some good products, but Microtech has we already have, I believe, the 8-port PoE out units, and those have 24-volt power supplies, but they also have a 48-volt power supply input so that you can go up to 48 volts, but you have to supply your own power supply. That's really good. And whenever we look at Nettonics has a good interface. There's nothing wrong with Nettonics, and they're rock solid. As long as these products are rock solid and they offer the surge support and all that kind of good stuff, like the Nettonics products, there's definitely not any reason to use Nettonics because Nettonics is more expensive, number one, and it doesn't give you full power out on all the ports. So we'll have to see how it all works out in the end by the time the products come out, by the time the systems come out, and as far as reliability, we'll have to see. That time is a killer on that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Time will tell. Well, part of the Mum Show is speaking with different people. It's kind of like a mini Westpalooza, if you will. And at the show, they were talking about router OS APIs. And on the show today, we have George Zabriskie and Marc Perea, and they have a product called Aerez that is a Microtech API, router OS API. Is that correct, guys?
Yeah, hi. So good morning, afternoon, depending on where you're at in the country. And welcome to the show, and thanks for having us on, Dennis and Steve. And so we help ISPs give their customers a dashboard and controls for their home network so that they can self-service their own Wi-Fi and LAN side network. And it also improves their internet experience by using, if you're familiar with Microtech, the Qtree and bandwidth shaping quality of service engines. So I guess I'll just talk a little bit about myself for a minute. We'll introduce George, and what we'd like to do is run through a version of our webinar that we do for ISPs, and that'll include a demo of our product. And so at the MUM, I gave a talk about using Microtech in the cloud to, it was called for fun and profit, but basically the deal was that, if you haven't tried a CHR on AWS yet, it's literally a 5-minute process to get one spun up. If you're a new Amazon user, you get your first year for free. And really, I think anybody who's using Microtech, there's no reason not to install it, play around. I had one of my ex-coworkers tell me, one of my peers said, I was taking the test and my router board flaked out and I didn't know what to do. So I ended up, taking my test without the assistance of a router board to log into and run commands and, see some things. And I said, if you'd just had your cloud router available, you could have logged in because you always have access to the Microtech wiki. Then that means you could also log into your Microtech in the cloud and you could have ran commands. And sure, it might not have been as good as having one locally on your desk, but would have got them through the test, I think, a little
all right. Well, here.
Right.
Oh, were you saying something, George, there? Or?
No, that was me. Sorry.
Oh, all right. So anyway, my name is Marc Perea. I'm the CTO of MCP Networks. MCP Networks made the product, which is called Aerez. I'm a network engineer of over a dozen years for larger ISP, I suppose a tier 3 ISP. Supported about 50,000 customers, did MPLS, Brocade certified, Cisco certified, MikroTik certified guy. And, my background is that I woke up in the middle of the night and was super thirsty, went to get a drink of water, and I could see the glow of a monitor on a reflection on the wall, and heard the clicking of keyboard and mouse, and went to find my 8-year-old son was playing online video games. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's a school night. And it was at that point I realized, hey, the time has come. We really need to get parental controls. This is my oldest son, and I know that I need to get controls. Both for the things that are happening now and the things that are coming. I know that I'm going to want to put some filtering on the network, and I want to do it from a centralized location. And at the time, there was nothing available on the market that handled everything from Windows to iOS, Android, Mac, etc. We wanted one thing that solved all those problems. And around the same time, that same week, I was pitching an idea to George that maybe we could sell, I was playing heavily with MikroTik product and saying, hey, I can do this load balancing, quality of service, bandwidth shaping. Let's develop a product that offers managed internet that's redundant and does load balancing to hotels and other B2B applications. Well, at the time, George was saying to me that, hey, run me through this MikroTik platform, and he's seeing all of the power and flexibility there, and he says, I've just bought this Google On Hub, and I wanted it to do a whole bunch of stuff, and it's not delivering any of the value that I wanted, very minimal value that he wanted out of it. But I can see here with the MikroTik, I can do everything I wanted. What do you think about slapping a front end on that we could use to do all the stuff that you want with parental controls? You set up bedtime blocker, content filtering, pause the internet, and then I'll be able to see all of the stuff that's going on in my home network that I want to see, and be able to get the control over devices that I'd like. And so that was how Aerez really got started. And we'll talk a little bit more about this story as we move on, but I'll give George an opportunity to introduce himself as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so a little background about me. Retired Air Force. I did 22 years. Started off as a ground radio guy, doing component level repairs on electronics, radio systems. Really enjoyed that. That was what I came in to do. I was one of those lucky guys that actually got to pick my job, and that was right up my alley. That evolved into becoming satellite communications by the time I retired. So over the span of my career, I'd gone from maintenance. I'd done engineering installation. I'd actually installed base network, one of the first base networks at Keesler Air Force Base down in Biloxi, Mississippi. Everything from running fiber to setting up the Christmas tree, as we call it, which is the patch panels for all the cables. The whole nine. So I know all that hardware back-end stuff. Eventually, I got to play with a little bit of server administrator stuff, and just like all things IT, it's always been my hobby and part of my job. And in the later years, I started working in process improvement, quality assurance, and the upper management levels until I retired. So outside of that, I'm just really a huge tech enthusiast. As Mark alluded to, I started off with that On Hub. Well, I didn't start off, but I got the On Hub in an attempt to try to get control of the network. But to backtrack a little bit, after I retired, I'd started my own consulting business, small business, IT focus. And I'd actually been doing that pretty much all my life as a hobby, and I said, why not do this full time? Shortly after that, Mark and Candace approached me with this idea, as he just described. And sure enough, I had just bought that On Hub. So the deal is, I'm a dad with 4 kids under, I guess, 6 at the time. And back in the day, Mark and I, we used to do LAN parties and set up servers and that kind of thing. So we had time then to sit down and play and configure things and spend all night and wake up when we felt like it, that kind of thing. But, as a parent, really didn't have that amount of time. So even though I could go in CLI and do things on a router, it wasn't efficient, it wasn't convenient anymore. So I definitely needed a front end that would allow me to do that really quick, really easy, but more importantly, make it really quick and easy for my wife to do. So if I wasn't around, she would be able to take control. And you know, most simplest thing that we use is just pausing the internet. And again, like Mark said, we'll get into that in a little more detail in our demo. But so that's where it was born, and that's been our passion. It's been our full-time job collectively. Mark and Candace, they both quit their job at that ISP that he was talking about to work on this full-time. Fortunately, I was already retired, and my wife was acting as the role of the sugar mama in a sense to kind of support me while we work on this. And so that's where we're at right now. And like Mark said as well, we start off with satisfying a need we had, sharing it with friends and family in our beta stages, and then opening it up to the public at the beginning of this year, straight to consumer. And always we had the idea of eventually partnering with ISPs. That was just kind of an obvious step in our mind. And talking with you guys and the other industry leaders down at that conference in Denver, at the MUM in Denver, it became really apparent that this was definitely our market fit. We had a lot of interest, and so we're really motivated. We really want to share it with everyone, get it out there, and help build partnerships that is mutually beneficial for all parties involved. And Mark, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit quickly to Candace, just her
sure.
background and her role. Oh, and I'm the COO, I'm the Chief Operating Instructor. Mark's obviously CTO, and Candace, she's our CEO, and he'll speak to her a little.
Sure. So Candace has over 10,000 hours, right? That's the key word for mastery of a thing. And she's been a developer for like 15 years. So she knows the ins and outs of all kinds of programming languages. She's super software engineer. And when George and I said, hey, we can take this platform and do really cool stuff, she's the one that really drove the user experience, the design of how that looks and feels, and obviously the magic of making it all happen. So while I'm taking care of the back-end systems and doing all the networking, she's putting in all the effort to put the pieces together that makes the glue actually put the pedal to the metal, so to speak.
Gotcha.
So let's
let's go into the presentation.
Sure.
Let's see what it is.
Absolutely. So let's see, George, you want to?
Yeah, so, okay, we just did the overview, so that's our pretty mugshots there. And this is, again, the presentation that we give during our webinar with potential ISP partners. So we like to discuss the pain points and how we can help solve some of those pain points that the ISPs have. And we talk about, Wi-Fi. It's one thing to have coverage everywhere, but if that network, the underlying network itself, is not maintained and managed properly, then you're going to have some issues regardless of how strong your signal strength is. And then the truck rolls, the advantage that the ISPs don't have to make as many on-site support calls, and they can do that support remotely. And then the installation being kind of a turnkey solution that the guys going out, the techs going out to do that installation, they don't have to log in a Winbox, which is an issue for some folks, or whatever that mechanism would be. This simplifies that whole process. And then the subscriber frustrations. I kind of talked to it for a second there about the Wi-Fi being slow. Even though you have strong signal, you can still have a congested network. And then being able to know what's going on. We had done we'd done some research, and we found some what's the word I'm looking for here? Surveys that have found that most people want to have that ability to kind of figure out what's going on their own before they reach out to support, self-identify problems. And so this gives them that visibility. And then parental controls, being able to do simple things like pause the internet, set up a bedtime blocker, block games, but still allow the kids to get on the network. And we'll go into a bit more detail on that. And then also knowing what new devices come on the network, knowing what's on the network. We're long gone from the days of having just that one computer plugged directly to the internet via modem or even DSL or whatever. Where now we've got most of our customers have at least 20 devices, or the average is 20 devices on a home network. So, and that's growing. Obviously, everything's becoming IoT, so that's going to be a growing number. So I'll let Mark talk about the magic behind what we do.
Absolutely. So yeah, we talked about the MUM, and if you missed my presentation, that's available on Microtip's MUM site. You can check out just the slides, or you can watch the video. But yeah, I just talked about how to spin up your own CHR, and then just basically an introduction into what the API is, and how you can use that to do cool stuff. And that cool stuff that we're doing is called Aerez. So on the bottom left, you'll see that you install a Microtik CPE with a custom configuration on it that ties it to our Aerez cloud servers. The end user, your subscriber, downloads our app from the Google Play or iOS App Store, or they can use a PC with a web browser to log into their account. But using TLS and VPN security, the user can control their home network from the palm of their hands and their phone. And they can do that from anywhere on the planet to do the cool stuff that we talked about, like pausing the internet, checking real-time health and status of the network. So our secret sauce, though, is our patented auto-tuning. As we shared our first proof of concept with our early beta users, time and again they came back to us and said the exact problem that you guys are aware of, that customers have congestion on their network and they don't know what to do about it. They don't know why it's there. They just reboot the modem and hope for the best. And in reality, what the problem is some device on the network is hogging the bandwidth, and you don't know what it is, they don't know what it is. So our algorithms periodically measure the bandwidth capacity of the network. We know how many devices are online, and we know how many users are in the app. So we dynamically adjust the quality of service and bandwidth shaping policy on that customer premise Microtik, so that automatically and without user intervention, your customer has the best experience possible. So we're guaranteeing lanes of bandwidth for each device, regardless of whether it's one device or 10 devices, 20 devices on the network. So this is especially useful for services that are under 30 megabits per second. Aerez plays the traffic cop on your network, so that when users are playing games, downloading, streaming, and surfing all at the same time, everyone feels like the internet is lightning fast for each of them, even when the others are heavily using it. And that's happens because we force those devices to play in their own lane.
Awesome. And so the bullet point list, and I'm definitely not a fan of reading out loud what people can read. So these are the bullet points, and it's actually a much large, well, not much larger, it's a larger list, and we're always adding. I think that's a key thing as well, that right now we've kind of paused development of the end user app because we've reached a point where it's a solid foundation, we feel. And so now we're focused on providing a great dashboard for our partners to be able to engage with, and we're working with a couple folks that we met down at the MUM to make that happen. So after that, our focus will go back to, or we'll continue to share the focus on developing the features for the end user based on customer feedback and what they want. So this list will continue to grow over time.
Yeah, and like George is saying,
I see network activity. Got a question. I see network activity. Can you expand that bullet point just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a great transition into the demo that we wanted to show. I'll just jump straight into that feature right now. So we have on our dashboard page here the view usage. So we can see the overall network activity. So this is dynamic based on that individual user. This is going to scale appropriately. So my download,
the size of their internet connection.
Right. So my download's about 50 meg right now. My upload's at 31, which is displayed here. And if I want to go into detail and see exactly what's consuming the bandwidth, I can go ahead and click device activity, and it'll show all the devices on my network and what each one is doing. So the device that I'm on right now is named Gallifrey. And let me go ahead and spin up a YouTube video because the broadcast bandwidth is actually pretty low. So we'll see how that jumps up once the video starts playing here. So you can see that 35 meg spike as that video is starting to buffer. And so that's what we mean by network activity, where you can actually see what each device is doing, which one is consuming the most bandwidth, etc. And Mark, if you want to add on to that at all.
No, I mean, you can see right there, that's half of the tool set that Aerez provides. Half of it is that, you have awareness and visibility right there on what is going on the network. And then the other half is the control, right? So you're able to pause that device. You can also know that under the hood, Aerez is bandwidth shaping so that even though he's got that thing running, it's not able to consume 100% of the bandwidth. It's forced to, if there's two devices, it's forced to do a 50-50 if both of them are trying to consume the entire capacity. But it will sit at maybe 90% and guarantee the 10% so that George's video stream here on Skype is able to still communicate flawless and smooth.
Aha.
And so for this particular screen, it actually uploads once every second. And as devices talk, you'll see that they continue to get added in real time. If the chart gets a little messy, we can go ahead and start removing devices to get a closer view at a particular device. And so actually, this is a relatively new feature that we've enabled, and I'm pretty fond of it. I'm pretty proud of it there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, from a West standpoint, having this would be really beneficial in the fact that people call me up and I can say, well, it looks like you're pulling all your bandwidth. Well, I don't even have a computer turned on. Well, something's connected.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
And how do you guys determine how much bandwidth the customer has?
So today we're doing that measurement between our Amazon Cloud server and the customer endpoint. We're in talks with some other ISPs, some WISPs that want to put a cloud-hosted bandwidth measurement tool on their own network so that we can do a measurement from inside their network and maybe eventually get to a point where we give a sense of, hey, here's your speed on your ISP's network, and then here's your global speed to the rest of the world.
That would be
And the help
powerful.
of it. Yep. And so, like George said, our community is super important to us. We take all of our customers' feedback and we run that through our filter of, hey, how can we use this feedback to make the experience better or make the app better? And we're doing that with our ISPs, and we've done that in the past with our users. So one of the things that users told us was that the pause button for the internet is too restrictive. They need to send little Johnny down to do homework. He's got to use his computer because he's in high school, and pausing the internet is unreasonable because he won't be able to do his homework. But they send him down there and he starts playing League of Legends or World of Warcraft, Minecraft. So help us out here. So we developed homework mode. George is there. It's on the user screen. And we'll show this. I think we'll walk through the rest of the app instead of jumping all over the place. But homework mode was a user-suggested feature that we jumped on and said, hey, we need to go there. And what that does is blocks anything that's non-standard port. So we'll still allow you to do port 80 and 443 and DNS queries. However, we're blocking all game ports. In the future, that's also going to block URL so that you can't do Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Netflix. But today, that was the quick fix, and we continue to iterate and make it better over time.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just flow through right now. We were jumping a little bit, but it was kind of cool because it was a guided discussion. But I'll give the quick 5 cents tour, nickel tour here on the overview. So after the login screen, which is just a basic username, password, and it also has a password reset option. I'm passing it for efficiency because I have to log. Anyway, so we have the dashboard here, which shows our overall download and upload. And then quick links to the stats and the usage. So the stats will just show the history of speed checks that Aerez has done for the users, so they can get a long-term overview of the performance of their network. And then we just went through the view usage, which was the network view, and then the actual device usage. And then we show an overview of how many users, how many devices on the network. Don't laugh at me. And then a global pause button here. So this global pause button, if no devices are selected as a master, this global pause button will prompt you to make a master device so that you don't lock yourself out from your home network to be able to make further changes. In which case you would have to go over to LTE or another network to be able to make those changes, log in and make those changes. But any device that's not labeled as a master will be paused once this button is clicked, and then we'll have notification down here in the activity log. Here was a feature request by users to have that upfront visibility of who's paused, what devices are paused. So when I paused Mom, it paused her as a user and then all of her devices. So this gives the ability for the user to unpause a particular device, Mom's iPhone, and clearly she's not here now because she would be screaming if had I done this. It's a very common argument in the house. So
yeah, that was another feature request from users, was that, hey, I paused something and then I have to go click into users, find the user, click into the user, and then unpause them. Can you just make it easy to unpause? We said, sure, we can stick that on the home screen.
So we get that, and we also show the status of the user. So if it was my daughter here, it would show that she has a couple devices to her name and she's under her child filter, and we'll show that in a moment. So yeah, and then you just have the activity log showing the history. Now this is persistent. It can be dismissed from this view, but later in the notifications in our settings, we can look at that history. So if you know, Johnny gets a hold of your phone or whatever device you use, they can't just remove all the history and you can't see it anymore. You wouldn't be aware. So also, real quick, I'll note out we have a chat bubble up top here. So this is not a feature that will be with all the packages when we partner with ISPs, but it is one we offer where we'll do first line support, and that would be activated through here. The customer would open up this chat log or chat bubble, and they could communicate directly with us for that first tier support. And it would have history. And there's also automation as well. So every time a user does a new thing, we have a pop-up that'll show, hey, we see you want to add a user. You might want to check this out. We've got little animated graphics, video links, that kind of thing, that kind of walks them through how to set up the first time they're going through the app. So that's the type of onboarding that we'll provide as well in those partnerships. Did you want to add on to that, Mark?
No, you're handling it, man.
All right.
One thing you mentioned at the beginning of the show, you guys are the creators of this, and you wanted to create this to where grandma could run it. Is that what this is?
It is. You know, we obviously could have thrown a lot of features in it and duplicated some services that other companies provide, but that was, you know, it's not what we wanted to do. We wanted our business model to be super easy, super simple. We know that there's the net nannies and the other parental control options out there where you can get in the weeds really deep, man. You know, you can have graphs and charts, you can whitelist, blacklist, you can set up really complex time schedules, the whole nine. And if people want to do that, by all means, but you know, that's a full-time job in my experience, and it was something that I needed to get away from. So we made it as simple as possible. You know, we have the parental control features because it was easy to implement. And then the way we did it, we felt it was super easy to do. So it's not like a chore for the parent. But it's basic, you know, simply pausing. And I'll get into the bedtime blocker here when we look at this user. The few features that we offer, we just wanted to keep it simple. So we're only going to add options if there's a cry out for them, if there's a request for them, like the homework mode that Mark mentioned. So moving into the users, the user list is, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, like George is saying, you know, simplicity is always in our mind, and absolutely we want this to be usable by grandma. As a matter of fact, we need to get one to, I've sent one to grandma on my side, and Candace is sending one to grandma on her side to help out with their home networks. And they're scared, right? And they're fearful of technology, and they're worried that they're going to break stuff. And that's part of the reason that we built this, was so that, you know, Winbox, super powerful, super flexible. You can do all kinds of crazy, awesome stuff as a network engineer. As an individual, I would be terrified. As a non-technologist, I mean, that is not the user interface you want, right? This is the interface that makes it so that you can't break anything and it's easy to use.
Yep. And so our user list is, we give you 2 basic users out the gate when you first install the app. And then again, we give the walkthrough as well on how to add users. But then adding a user, the point of adding the user is so that you have that central point of control for a group of devices. So whether we call it users, I know Google Wi-Fi calls it groups, Whatever the nomenclature, basically all it is a single point of control for a group of devices is what it breaks down to. So I have people in my user list, pretty large family there, but I also have the house and media. And that's something that I chose to do because that's how I wanted to segregate my devices and have control over them and also assign bandwidth. So
sure. And in my case, I have a user called Smart TVs, right? And my Roku, my Apple TVs, my video game systems, and the smart TVs are all in that user, so that when I want to pause for dinner time, I just hit the one button on the one user.
And that's my media user, right? And so also of note is we have priority. So every time you make a user, you set the priority for that user. So we have high, medium, standard, low. Now, what that means, and Mark can talk about that in more detail, is that this calculates into our algorithm to decide who gets priority in the case that the network is being maxed out, right? So higher priority is going to have higher priority, and they're going to have a larger pipe to work with, right? They're going to be given the right of way, as it were.
Yep, and so the algorithm uses that value also as a measurement or metric to use as part of the math. So a high priority device gets more reserved bandwidth in a congestion state than a low priority device. So not only do you get higher priority, but you've also got more guaranteed bandwidth.
So of course, Dad, I've got high priority. And then on the kids, I'm going to give them low priority because I don't need them to be taking up the whole pipe. So I'll just make, this guy have low priority. And so for the users, these are the options that are persistent across all the users. We can switch them to homework mode that we discussed earlier. We can set up the bedtime blocker for the hours during the week and the weekend that they will be able to have access. So basically, it just shuts down the internet at this time during weeknights and this time on weekends. And then child-friendly filter is basically using Google Safe Search and our open DNS hooks to kind of protect them from malicious content. And it's an on-off. It's definitely not. Again, we don't want to get into the weeds unnecessarily. And we have had a few people ask, well, I have teens, maybe want them to have access to a little bit more. And which brings up a good point. Is, we feel like there's no way you're going to block, and you probably wouldn't want to block your children from everything, right? This is just parenting in the current millennium, right? You're not going to block it. They're going to find a way around it. So we're also, while trying to be simple, we're also thinking of how do we want to use this? And we want this to be a tool, not so much a controlling mechanism, but a tool to allow the parents to be notified when there's a conversation to be had. So instead of blocking everything flat out, we plan on introducing notifications of the type of content that was attempted to be seen so that the parent can say, okay, yeah, I think this might be an opportunity to talk to Johnny about, where he's trying to go on the internet. Maybe it was a one-off, maybe it was a malicious link that he accidentally clicked and it tried to go somewhere and that got blocked and it notified the parent. But if it happens persistently, maybe it's time to have a chat, right? So again, it's just meant to be a tool to help the parents and not necessarily block the child from everything because they still got to grow up. And then, of course, the pause button is relative to that user when it's on the user screen. Anything else on users, Mark, that I'm missing out here?
No, I think we can move on to devices.
All right.
And so the devices are automatically detected. Our implementation requires you to do DHCP on the customer network. And again, we wanted to make this easy so there's no hooks today for automatically detecting if somebody puts in a static IP. And we prevent that because we don't want, again, kids getting around our filtering by putting in a static IP or changing their MAC address. So we've got some tech in place that prevents that from happening. But so the devices here get automatically detected, and we've got them separated out into active devices, which means they've communicated in the last 10 minutes. Inactive devices, which are devices that have been on your network. Maybe you still want to apply policy for them or assign them to users, but they're not currently on your network. And then guest devices, which are devices that if you you'll see in a moment when we get to settings, you can go into your network settings and create a guest Wi-Fi that's completely firewall isolated from the rest of your network. And so guest devices go into that category. So if we just pick a device and go in there, we can take a look here. So you can put a nickname in the device. We've got a helper identifier we call fingerprinting that's going to come into play shortly here. That's one of the things we're working on. We just have to get it from our test servers to our production servers, and it'll help identify that, hey, this thing is Apple iPhone 6s Plus or Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge versus whatever name it identifies itself as, which is really...
Yeah, I'll show a quick example here. This Android is notorious, whether it's the phones, tablets, regardless of manufacturer, they kind of label themselves with Android and then a string of crazy characters. At least you know it's an Android device, but there's a handful of other devices that don't play well with the whole naming convention. So that's what the fingerprinting is going to be used for, to kind of solve those issues.
Yep. Again, helping out for grandma so that she doesn't have to investigate or figure this out or call somebody else for help, right? And so we've got that tech. It just hasn't been shipped yet. And let's see. So you've got your user. That's where you assign the device to a user. Your screen's a little small for me, George, but you want to talk about the rest there?
Sure. The master device button is what you would tick to make sure that device doesn't get paused when you do a global pause, and that'll prevent that. So that's actually all the user intervention at that point for most users. So that's why we have our save button right there. But right beneath that, if necessary, we've got some guys that are high speed like I used to be, and maybe want to run a home server, game server, whatever. So we'll throw that
system, web camera.
Security systems, right? So we have the port forwarding section in there, so they can actually add ports or multiple ports to be forwarded. And the rest, sorry about that. The rest is kind of just informational. So the device name, the status, which is kind of go, no go, the IP address and MAC address, and the last time that it had been seen on the network. And
cool.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so we'll jump over to settings, just in case George needs to mute there. Who knows? Maybe we'll have some visitors in his room here in a minute.
Yeah,
but,
we almost had one coming down the stairs there.
All right, so inside profile is where you can set a little bit of graphics. You can add an image, but importantly, you can set your nickname up for the account and email and contact info. So we have a notifications engine. So when certain things happen, and this is a toggleable field for ISPs that partner with us, but when we sell direct to consumers, they wanted to know, hey, when is my ISP network going down versus something being a problem on my home network? I want to know when a new device comes on the network. So we've got a story where one of our users had a daughter that got grounded, was on pause for the internet, and she gets a text notification that Jane's iPad joined the network, and she doesn't have a daughter named Jane, so goes down and talks to the daughter and says, hey, what's going on here? And turns out they traded tablets at school so that both of them would be able to use their stuff at home because they were both grounded from the internet. And so just little things we can do that help notify are absolutely things we're interested in doing. So back to settings, the important things that you can do here, most important things are under network settings. And so right here is where you can set your SSID and passphrase and turn your Wi-Fi on or off and turn passwords on or off. So I know from experience that every family member that I go to that's non-technical, getting on their Wi-Fi is such a pain. You either ask them and they have to find the piece of paper that they wrote everything down on, or they tell you to climb under the desk, find the router, look at the sticky on the side of it.
Don't forget a flashlight and your reading glasses.
Yeah, exactly. So it should not, with the tech that we're at, the tech level that society is at, there's no reason for it to be that way. So this is the easy way for you to see what it is. You can show the password. It'll show you what your password is. George just exposed that to the world. So if you're war driving in Anchorage, you might be able to find his network now.
Good luck.
And then in the same way, we created the guest network because for a lot of people, you're having friends over. Sometimes they're friends that you trust. Sometimes they're the kids' friends. And you don't necessarily want that kid's friend's PC or tablet to be on the same network as your work from home computer that you need critically to be on your VPN. So if you'd like that firewall ISO.
Yep, I think we lost him. Yeah, we did. Let's try this again.
Tuning and hit that optimize button periodically. We recommend nobody hits the restart router, but we had so many people ask us, where's the restart router button? No trouble that we've had has been related to having to restart the router. And I think anybody who's familiar with the Microtik platform knows that it's a very stable platform. But we ended up having to put the button in there just because people wanted to see it. We know
placebo
that
effect, yeah.
it is placebo effect. So we get alarms when people click that button. So nobody is using it, but once in a while people do hit it, and we end up asking them, "Hey, is there a problem?" Because we always know if they hit restart router, it's because something is not working that should be working. So moving on. As George mentioned, the notifications area, that's just the full history of notifications if you've dismissed. That's activity log, where the full list of the activity log is. Notifications is where you can turn on and off notifications. Right now we've got notifications set for email and text, and that's going to move to text and push notifications now that we just launched our native apps, and they've finally been approved both on iOS and Android store. Support is a way to get to both our chat support, our fax. Maybe George can talk about this better than I can. He's way more familiar with our support.
So again, this is our consumer-facing product here. So if we do hit the fax, we have a kind of like a wiki, not a wiki, but kind of like a help desk here, just to kind of self-help and do some searches on popular topics. We populate this based on questions people ask. If they do a search here and it doesn't provide a result, we'll be notified and we'll create an article for that. And that's obviously something that we'll offer to our partners if they want to have that as a white label option. And then the chat now button is a little bit legacy as well. This was in place before we implemented the button persistent throughout the app. Just wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to get help. And then email and phone, of course, which phone would be an option, of course, that may not be there.
So I wanted to walk through just a minute on how the tech install goes. And so, like we talked about, if you want to buy your Microtiks from us pre-configured so that you just walk in, install it, and then walk away, that's one option. Second option is that maybe you want to buy your own Microtiks, or you've already got your own Microtiks deployed, and you would like to install our software. So in that case, we send you a config. We merge that config with your existing config. It'll talk to our cloud, and at that point, we're able to manage the device. Let's see. Oh, George is showing our V1 admin dashboard here. It just shows that whether the device is reachable and a little bit of status info about it. So this is where we're really spending the next quarter putting the most time into. Like George said, our customer-facing version is pretty robust, I would say. And as far as the ISP partner dashboard, that's where we're looking to put our core time and add the most features. Because as we said, we're a software company. Our goal is to continue providing value with our software. And so in any way that we can help out and make your jobs and lives easier, that's what we want to do.
Right. So I'm an ISP, and I deploy HAP lights for client routers so I can manage their stuff and kind of see what you're seeing from a technical standpoint. I'm able to log into someone's network and say, well, this computer here sucking all the bandwidth. What is it? I have the ability to do that. With your solution, do I have the ability to still Winbox into that router I've deployed on top of utilizing your service?
Yeah, so two things. One is in the ISP version of the dashboard, you're able to cut through and see exactly what the customer sees. Two, if you want to look at the details of that customer's hardware, we're going to display stats on what the current health of that network is, and if you're an engineer, all that stuff's going to make sense to you. And finally, if you're interested in just getting direct raw access, absolutely, just let us know what IPs you're going to be coming from, and we'll work together on the firewall rules to allow that communication to happen without it being exposed to the world.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a summary. Did you want to go into any more detail on this, Mark? I think that was pretty much it for our presentation portion.
Yeah, so I guess I would like to just share a little bit about where we're going. Like I said, the admin panel is where we're going to spend the most time. In the same way that our current device usage and usage screens show those charts that a customer can get at a glance what the throughput of their network is, traffic-wise, bandwidth-wise, we want to do the same thing for Wi-Fi signal. And that makes sense because we're also going to move into mesh. We've got extenders shipping today. So if you want full visibility, we can put an additional MikroTik out there with our software on it that talks to this version of Aerez, and we'll be able to tell you what the signal strength is, how that thing looks, whether it's healthy or not, what its throughput is, etc. And so we're working on those things over the next quarter also. What we'd also like to do is right there in the middle of the screen between the upload and download snapshots is put a health score, just so that, again, for grandma, it's easy to see at a glance, hey, are things, I see some numbers here, but what does that mean? We'd like to give a better measurement of, are things looking good, or is there something that needs to be investigated?
Yeah, I agree with you. Majority of my people, well, I get 2 megs down and 1 meg up, but what does that mean? They can judge that on how their Netflix buffers. And a health score would be something intuitive.
Right. So that's where we're going. Yep. I just wanted to share that with everybody. So I think that wraps up our demo here, and we're absolutely ready to answer questions. I guess we've got about 10 minutes left if we're trying to fit in an hour.
Dennis, you got any questions?
No, I'm pretty good. I think maybe you ought to put in.
Well, anyways, is this a cost per subscription, or is this a one-time cost? What would it take an ISP to, if they reach out to you, what would it take for us to get the ball rolling if we were interested in this product or service?
Yeah, so we've got 2 pieces. One is the license, which will get you a copy of our config and entitlement to use the service. And so the license is $25 per unit with a 10-unit minimum purchase. So we can get you started as small as you want. And then there is a per-month subscription fee. And we got a lot of feedback on that. And we know that a lot of companies are already doing a managed Wi-Fi service, and some of them are just sticking MikroTiks out there and they're not actually doing any value add, but they've stuck the MikroTik out there just so that they can log in if they need to. If you've already done that, great. We're going to charge you $4 a month per subscriber to enable our Aerez service, and then you'll still be making recurring revenue on that model and providing better customer service and hopefully reducing your support cost by enabling the service. We've got an additional model that we're piloting with some ISPs to offer a locally hosted solution. So part of the $4 is going to our costs of running this stuff in the cloud, paying for bandwidth and storage and all the rest of that stuff. If you wanted to run your own local hosted solution, that's really targeted for ISPs with 1,000 customers, and we're shooting to get down to that $2 per subscriber per month cost. But then we remove the support options and really everything's running on your servers. It's your implementation. We're just supporting the server install and making sure that you can still provision services and enable your customers to get to the dashboard.
And part of that partnership includes the continuing updates whenever we add features and that type of thing. You know, just to be clear, the only thing that removes on that self-hosted option is that that chat panel, really, and that first level support, which, you know, some people just don't need. So it's definitely a good way to shave off a couple bucks there per user and give you a little more control if you want to have that level of control. But if you're not that big and you want to be able to, you know, kind of hand off that first level, we're willing to take on that as well.
Yeah, and a little bit of extra.
In my network, like I said, I deploy MikroTiks out there, kind of like what you were explaining, Mark. You know, just put it out there so I have a test point and to see what's going on inside the network. So you said $25 per config. So I already have these out there. What would I do? Just drop the config on there for $25? And then what have you been seeing? Am I right with what I just said?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And so what we've been seeing it for the monthlies is that we charge $12.99 direct to consumer for our end user customers per month. And we've seen everything from not charging at all to the typical is between $5 and $9 per month. So for a managed Wi-Fi service.
Right. A couple of WISPA-paloozas ago, we talked about going back to managed routed services and some providers adding $5 for that. In my neck of the woods, I'd probably be hung up and no one would accept it. But $5 is pretty reasonable for giving me the ability to go into their network and say, hey, this computer's sucking all the bandwidth. So this dovetails nicely into what I currently do. What would someone do as in to contact you guys? I see your website's on the screen there. What's the turnaround time for setting something up with someone with MikroTiks already in the field?
Yeah, so I mean that could be as simple as a couple of days if you already have MikroTiks deployed and you're just looking to merge our config. We need to vet which, as long as we've got our version running in our lab that we can vet your config against, then we'll take a copy of your config, merge it with our config, run it through the lab, and we can have that turned around in less than a week, depending on what their volume is. If you need to place an order with us, that depends on volume. We've got some inventory on hand. We carry the HAP AC lights and HAP AC, but if you need a different version, we can work with you on that. We've also used 2011 cloud cores. We've got some caps and WAPs. We can really, I mean, the MikroTik platform, the awesome thing about it is that hardware agnostic, the software runs the same regardless. It's just about what's the CPU, what's the RAM, how many radios, and which frequency of radios they are. So we do require a little bit of CPU. So if you're really using the lower end stuff, you're going to see some dropped throughput. So I know some people use 2011s and they're doing gig services, so they're probably trying to push 300 meg through it or something like that. And you know, we're not going to be able to do 300 meg on a 2011 because it's a older model. HAP AC, we can do 880 meg in our lab, no problem. So really, it just it depends on what your throughputs are. You know, if you're only offering a 30 meg max package, we can probably work on just about any router board out there. But if you're going for higher speeds, we definitely want to be looking at which model for the RAM and CPU.
Gotcha. So talking $25 per device, $4 per subscriber. Is there initial upfront cost to get all this rolling?
And that's it, unless you're doing the locally hosted option. So on the local hosted option, you know, we've got some server setup fees. It's going to be some integration stuff that needs to happen. So if you're a larger ISP, you know, give us a call. We'll work with you. We're actually in the pilot program right now. We're looking for a couple more pilots to run that on. And so we're waiving some of our fees on the local hosted option. But on the, you're absolutely right. If you just want to get started with us and do a trial, we can get you started for as little as 10 pack of devices and licenses. And like you said, you buy in for $25 per license, and a minimum of 10 is $40 a month. So your investment's very, very low, and there's no requirement for you to stay on if it turns out that it doesn't work for you.
Oh, that was going to be my next question.
There's no contract.
Gotcha.
We think you're going to love it as much as we do.
Right.
We know you will.
How most ISPs operate. Well, anything else, George?
Oh no, I could talk forever, man. I think that pretty much sums up the key points. But yeah, we're really passionate about it. We're really excited to get some more partnerships, like Mark was saying, the pilots, and finding the different ways that we can implement it. The different use cases. Again, iterate. We're a software company that just happens to have some really, really strong specialities with the whole ISP game. So we definitely want to find some different looks. For example, the homework mode, we never thought about. All our kids were under 10. So, getting that feedback from the customer helped us to implement something that was relatively easy. We may not be an exact fit today, but it may be something that's just a border case that's really easy to implement. So we definitely want to get feedback from ISPs on how we can make, this a benefit for them and solve their pains.
So, you talk about these changes like the homework mode, and I think that's a fabulous feature to your service. Say that you were talking about being able to block certain websites, and Microtech, I know how to go do that. But if we're signed up with you and these clients have a service utilizing what you guys do through us, if you come up with that new feature, is that just a push feature that you push to the client's router through your VPN?
Exactly, yeah. So we manage firmware updates automatically on our side, and all new features go through a vetting process on our test servers where we do all our development, and then when we push those through to our production servers, it's just live at that point to all of our customers, including your customers as partners.
Right.
So a couple of things I guess I would like to mention. Our website for the product itself is called Aerez, and it's AEREZ.net. And if you want to work with us as a partner, you should visit mcpnetworks.us. That's mcpnetworks.us. And we've got an ISP link. There's also a link that you can get to from aerez.net/ISP. And absolutely reach out to us. Let's have a conversation. Obviously we're very, I want to say down to earth, and as passionate as we are, we're interested in helping, right? We want to make your customer's life better, make your life better, and if we can do that, great. Let's work together. If we can't, we'd still love to hear from you and hear why we can't, or what would it take? What are we missing?
Right. So Dennis, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Go, Dennis.
I'm here. Can you not hear me?
Dennis.
Apparently not.
Well,
I think he's out tackling Microsoft gremlins.
Exactly. Well, that wraps up the show, guys. We appreciate you participating. And if you guys have any questions, George or Mark, please reach out to them. So with that, we'll wrap it up and have a good. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.
Thank you.